Hey, so thank you from the bottom of my heart to my 7 donors. I'm very touched. I'm trying to raise finance to continue my two Court of Appeal cases. The arguments are with the judge, and I've had to publish them. I wouldn't have thought that would be appropriate, but I'm forced to publish them because I have to raise financial support for them to continue them because access to justice in New Zealand doesn't exist unless you're rich or unless you prostitute yourself for money, excuse me. But that's what I'm forced to do. But I'm still super touched at my 7 donors, and obviously I need to raise a lot more in order to afford the cases to continue, and I've got the deadline of the 21st that I have to have the funds to the court. So an impossible deadline, an impossible task was set really in order to block these cases out of court. But these cases are about the poisoning of your children and the theft of their land, like a legacy land wealth in Auckland. All of our public land is being disposed of right now. It's a massive theft. It's the biggest theft in the history of the country, and under Mayor Goff and his counterpart in Parliament, Ardern, is mass poisoning all of our rivers, lakes and streams right across the country. If she is not stopped, this mad woman who's followed up, who was trained up by Helen Clark, who introduced this into policy with the first 50 million as a government killing program effectively back in the 90s, as I understand. And back then she was covering up. There was a massive miscarriages, for example, on One Drop of 1080, which she completely covered up. Stephen Palmer, the medical officer of health, wanted it investigated, really pushed really hard, and her cronies like I think Annette King, and she's just got this killer group of people who are now all the staff of Ardern. So, they are deliberately killing people in this country by chemicals at the moment. Chemicals, toxic lethal poisons in your water will be consumed, and you will get disease and suffer sterility. That's probably your best outcome, is to suffer sterility, because this is a reproductive toxin. It's a nerve agent. It's a neurotoxin. Minor effect would be depression. Major effect would be increasing brain retardation, which I have to say I think is a problem in New Zealand. Anyway, I just put some cream on my face, which is making my eye like what's the word? Can't think. Anyway, okay, so I'm super glad to get the 7 donors. I would be super grateful if I could get some more. This is against all odds. I've done this work for 7 years, or 10 years if you count my business development, to turn a New Zealand dairy industry into a premium industry, earning a premium off organics, which was super sabotaged because totally goes against the poison regime that attempts to totally stop agriculture right now. It's a UN-led biodiversity plan that has agriculture ended. And there's a biodiversity conference in Egypt maybe this week, might be happening already. And it's terrifying. And of course the science is all wrong. It's completely fraudulent science. I mean, without animals, all of our land will turn to desert. The reason that land stays fertile and like an oasis, if it's not the jungle or the forest, is because of the natural mulching that occurs when the animals urinate and pass what's on the soil and break it up with their hooves, and so the soil becomes A, fertile, and B, able to retain the water. So it's so terrifying how stupid these people are and how they seem to have all the power over the governments, and they are totally divesting our way of life right now. I argue that there is no population expected to warrant the mass sell-off of all our public land in Auckland, unless it is to house the toxified countryside population being forcibly transferred to the city. Because there is no other population that matches Goff's forecast, except for the inevitable consequence of this crime, which is that, in Taupo especially, like all the lakes, rivers and streams and the drinking water, the reservoirs that flow down into Taupo have been bombed with 1080 relentlessly. And, my injunction in the High Court tried to stop this, and until Ardern came back from maternity leave, it did manage to stop it, but she pushed it all forward. She's a mass murderer, and she's under review by the International Criminal Court for this crime. So, I progressed through the New Zealand court systems, although I was reading about the Queen and Right yesterday, and I was like, God, how do I apply for that job? Because if you were the Queen, if you were the Queen and Right, and you were genuinely a patriot, you would fire all the judges, and you would fire all of Parliament, and you would start this country again. That's how sick our system is right now. Your children are being poisoned. Their water and food system is being poisoned. They'll just start automatically having seizures. They'll start struggling. They'll have mental problems. They'll have depressions. They'll have strokes. They'll have ovarian and prostate cancer and bowel cancer and breast cancer. Their children will be born deformed, or they'll be sterile. They'll have heart problems. They'll have strokes when they're young. This is how lethal this chemical is. It's the most toxic lethal chemical in the world. And Ardern is mass dumping it in your water and smiling you to your death. She's a smiling assassin. Seriously. And I argue this in court, so it's no secret, and I'm right. The thing is that the Crown argue back, the Solicitor General argue back that the court has no power to stop a government poisoning program, even when it's a genocidal poisoning program, and that is bullshit. That's another thing I'd do, is I'd fire every single person in that Solicitor General's office, because they're fucking traitors, they're treasonous, and they're betraying their country right now. These people are betraying our country right now. It's not a joke. Our media is completely complicit in it. They literally tell you straight out lies. They act like people who are against 1080, which is the most toxic lethal poison, torture poisoning animals all across the bush for prolonged periods of time. I posted a photo the other day of a young boy sitting there with his dog that's just been tortured to death. Like, torture poisoning pets, but that water in sublethal doses, and that poisoned water in sublethal doses goes across, irrigates your food, so you've got kiwi fruits with deadly pathogens now. Oh no, but here's the thing, they promote Mycoplasma bovis. I think it's mop top, they call the potato disease that's happening. They've got myrtle rust as a fungi in the bees, which pollinate most of our good foods, with poison and poisonous fungi. The kiwi fruit, I ate kiwi fruit the other day and got neuropoisoning, and it was the most horrific experience of my life. I thought I was going to lose my brain. Like, my brain was just going to stop working, like I'd be alive. Then I read there's a guy in Fiji at the moment who his brain is enlarged, and the guy said he's kicking and he's tapping to let them know that he's still there, but his brain is enlarged and his body functions shut down. And I swear to God, when I got neuropoisoned, and this was just when I was on deadline to submit my legal argument, which I've posted here, that's what I felt like was happening to me. Like, my mind was still there, but I felt like my brain was bruised, swelling, enlarged, and literally gonna shut down my entire body. Like, my function would shut down. And that's what happened. The same feeling when I got attacked by EMF bursts. Like, that's another problem, like with fundraising. There's a whole lot of people I could phone and lobby, but for months now I haven't been able to use my phone, because the last 2 times I did, I had massive EMF pulse sent up. One went right up through my headphones. Like, I literally felt the surge come up through my headphones into my brain and just basically cooked my brain. And holy fucking shit. Sorry, excuse my language, but for the next month, my brain was so enlarged, pushing against my skull, so bruised, I seriously thought I was going to die. I'm just lucky that I had certain remedies on hand to help me cope with it, or maybe I just have 9 lives. Maybe I truly am a cat and keep surviving these attacks. It's not the first one. I suffered a few poisonings overseas as well. I swear to God, that is the mode of assassination now. That is one of the key modes of assassination now of this sustainability cabal, who are literally, I think the climate change narrative is literally, and people can't get their heads wrapped around this, but because it is fake, if you know the science, the truth of the science, not the propaganda that these media outlets spin to you and these government spokespeople spin to you, but the truth of the science is that, and the truth of the Paris Agreement, it does nothing to stop environmental destruction. It just basically, it enables a global financial mechanism that enables the global shift to a carbon currency. It'll be like that movie Time. You have to watch that movie Time, where you literally only get to stay alive if you pay your tax by, like, call it carbon. And you earn your money in carbon, and they control everything, and you've got an AI chip in you, and if you don't pay your tax on time by carbon, you die. Like, it's a really good movie. No, I'm getting a bit distracted here, but the point is that the future that these people plan, they have planned. You know, you've got I can't say his name properly, Michiko Kahu, who just spoke here, and he's saying we're at the start of a new civilization. And that civilization is coming about because of AI technology chipped into these people who are doing this, which totally devoids them of humanity. So they're capable of mass torture poisoning animals. They're capable of mass torture poisoning humans to death, and that's what they're doing. This is a war on humans. And most people in New Zealand probably really struggle with that concept, but that's what's happening, buddy. If you don't snap into reality, read my legal arguments. There is a threat to your life right now. There's a threat to your children's life right now, and it's been done by a group of people who are in charge of technologies and governments and power and media, and back into some of the old money and the new money. And they believe they're smart enough to conceive of a new civilization that allows them to poison all of nature to death. They are poisoning the oceans. They are poisoning our rivers, lakes and streams. They are destroying water. They are destroying all living ecosystems. They are poisoning forests, and I mean, there's nothing more inconceivably crazy, right? I'm surprised the International Criminal Court haven't sent an arrest warrant for Governor Reddy and Jacinda Ardern and the Queen out already, because you have to be mentally ill to do what they're doing. Mass torture poisoning animals all across the forest that in order to poison the water of the people. And that's what's happening. And then you've got these thick people in media. I really don't know if Duncan Garner, again, is totally thick, totally programmed, like an AA chip, just can't see the wood for the trees, just has no reality, or is just completely, absolutely 100% criminal, because, his promotion, and there's a whole lot of them on News Hub and across TVNZ, and the Operation Mockingbird media profile, because, I've noticed, when I got back to the country, I even did an OIA, I even did a complaint to the Ombudsman, because, I mean, how pointless is that? But it was just interesting to realise it was pointless, in real time. But that whatever media narrative comes out, it's exactly the same on TV3 and TVNZ. You'll see exactly the same language is used. There's no separation between the state page and the state page media outlet and the privately owned media outlet. They're the same. They give the same narrative. It's a joke. It's controlled. Google Operation Mockingbird. Muldoon tried to get rid of them all and failed on one. And then you've got, when I was looking, another one of my cases, the Syrian war, was involved in that company Cambridge Analytica, it's a really long story how that was linked into one of the companies that could have been behind messing with the narratives to invoke the Syria war and keep it going, and closely related company to the Queen or the cousin of the Queen or something. No surprises. But all these they spoke about their expertise in controlling the mainstream mindset, controlling the mind of the masses, and it's these intelligence agencies specialise in that now. Their ability to understand the brain and the way it works, and understand people and the way they work, and cause them to idolise, the new trend is definitely to cause them to idolise politicians, isn't it? I mean, Jacinda Ardern is mass murdering her people right now. There's no question. She's done it. She's dumped toxic poisons all over our living ecosystem and our water, and that in parts per million, trillion, billion, whatever, is going to cause you some sort of physical damage. And she's done it, and the media protect her crime, and her government cronies protect her crime. As I said, I'd love to be Queen and right and fire them all, clean out all of Parliament. That's what needs to happen. They all need to be fired. They are deadly criminal, and if they're not, they're complicit, and if they're not, they are surely aware. You couldn't be in that disgusting cannibal's cave and not be aware of this crime. There's nothing more logical than putting poison in water. Would you ever put poison in your water and drink it? You never would. Would you believe someone if they said, it totally disappears in a week, it's fine, drink the water? No, you wouldn't, because it's not believable, and all the science supports that. It doesn't. It metabolizes, it changes form into deadly products, deadly molecules that go on to kill you, this is just, it's just such a this is really like, I call it the Fourth Reich. Whenever I write to media, I write sarcastic notes like, you're traitors, this is the Fourth Reich, you're communist fucking treasonous bastards, basically, because they are. And effectively, they are telling people that it's safe for poison to be in their water when it's killing their children. You know, this is an attack on all life in New Zealand. So, okay, so I'm just rambling really because I have to beg for money because I have no money, so I have no privacy because the courts just violated all sense of privacy. So I have to publicly brand myself as someone who has no money, and, you know, because I'm a woman and this is a patriarchal, misogynist, fucked up society where all the men control the money and people like me don't have access to it. And I did used to have a lot of money because I had a business and my family were worth 45 million before Michael Fay, the big thief who divested the entire nation and privatised the banking system and the rail system, came home and used his millions to target my family to get them sold up and buy their property, so that we lost everything after I did a big development to transition the dairy industry to organics for a premium, so that we didn't need to poison the country, and was sabotaged. So and then I set up with Sally Ridge in my house not paying her rent so that I couldn't pay my rent, and she wouldn't allow any agents through to sell my house, so I couldn't pay my rent, couldn't sell my house. Then I sold up. Then they wouldn't accept a offer within a month, that sales offer. Finally, when I had access to my house after I sold, so Sally Ridge just stayed there until I'd get sold up basically, and then I finally had an offer for my house, and it was 1.16 million, which was, you know, like about 440,000 below, or 340,000 below its valuation at the time, but anyway, still an offer, and they wouldn't accept it until they divested all of my equity and rendered me like permanently fucked. So that's the sustainable, I call them sustainable cabal because but it's not really. You know, they're one part of it. The faux sustainable people like Philip Mills and the Next Foundation and Zip and Stephen Tyndall and Morgan, and they're all fucking killers. They're all financing this poisoning program. Well, I don't think Philip Mills has financed Jacinda Ardern into power after I gave him my promotion about a young woman running for Prime Minister. He snapped that up and told me he was going to put another young woman to run for Prime Minister. Fucking stealing my idea. I should have really trademarked that. But no, I'm just kidding. Anyway, look, my dream for Prime Minister is totally completely over, because I realise the system is completely fraudulent and rigged. There's no justice in the system, there's no democracy, they're crashing our currency, they're crashing capitalism. If we do not stop these people, by 2030 we don't have a country. We're a UN global state, our ecosystem is so deadly poisoned right now, we won't survive it. We'll run out of food. Look at Yemen. We're all going to be starving. We're all going to be pictures with our ribs hanging out and like starving to death and waiting for the world to come and save us while they're all in turmoil. You know, look at those fires in Malibu. There's a reason why Leonardo DiCaprio sold his Malibu house and got out of there. He had a fucking warning. Excuse my language, but it's true. He's a complete fraud. I went right through the rainforest and asked every single Indigenous leader in Ecuador if they'd received any of his promised money. He said at the Oscars, and he said he was going to give millions of dollars to the Indigenous people in Ecuador. None of the 11 Indigenous tribes of the Amazon rainforest. I was in the Amazon, deep in the Amazon rainforest, on video, interviewing every single leader of the Amazon tribes in Ecuador. None of them received any money from the big liar Leonardo DiCaprio that at the Oscars and said he was going to give all the money to the Ecuadorian leaders. And then after I accused him of that, he rocked up with a couple of the there's a little tribe, like 500 people they say, but I think it's less, like just a little group who say that their land is lost, and that he rocked up in some protest with them by his side. I'm like, so fake. Did you give them the millions of dollars you promised? No. Stealer. Anyway, okay, I'm so rambling because I just don't have anything to say, but just to beg for money for my cases. Anyway, please read my case arguments if anyone gets to see this video, because our Facebook communist socialist government shut down my distribution. Then please consider financing, because your children are being poisoned. And the 10-page argument that just focuses on the water poisoning, that's just one small part of my argument. My larger argument is about the actual crime occurring in this country, which is that we are being completely divested to a communist UN state by 2030 by treacherous means of terror and disease and fake climate change, which is caused by chemicals. They're poisoning all the insects, they're poisoning all of the wildlife or slaughtering them, they're poisoning everything to death. And they're poisoning all the livestock because that water travels down into the livestock troughs. Okay, that's my big ramble to beg for money because I'm being, on my walk of humiliation as ordered by the Court of Appeal because I don't have any rights, no rights to privacy, no rights to, pretend that I have some sort of success in my life path of trying to save the world from mass industrial destruction. It's been a life of service, and that's the thing. I know after 10 years of trying to raise money for these sorts of cases, this is my 7th case accepted for review by the International Criminal Court, and I've pioneered the interpretation of the Rome Statute against environmental destruction for the world. It's an intellectual contribution, but unfortunately I think a little bit because of the way I look and just genuinely because people don't like to put money into cases that fight billionaires and industrialists who are murderous thugs. It's really impossible to raise money for these cases, but I'm forced to at the moment because I have no other way to pay the fees, and I have a deadline of the 21st. And even I've put my bank account there because I'm not sure I can get the money transferred off the fundraiser page in time to pay the fees anyway. But anyway, I'll try and work it out. But if you want, you can donate directly to my bank account. This is me begging. I know I'm terrible at it, but I would really appreciate your donation. Okay, see ya.